the Florida Writer Podcast, a discussion about writing and other things.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. And today I am lucky enough to be with John Chaplick. John, could you give us a 60-second elevator pitch about who you are and what you write?
Yes, I'm a retired CPA who woke up one morning at the breakfast table wondering what to do with my life now that my requirements as a CPA were done and my requirements as a consultant were finished. And I had no idea, so I finally decided, okay, I'm going to start writing. And I journeyed down a long trail, which was more like a climb up a steep cliff. And 3 or 4 years later, I finally emerged, started writing books, joined 2 organizations, which had interesting people that would tear my manuscripts apart and teach me how to write better. And at the end of the journey, I published 5 award-winning books.
Wow, 5. That is quite a journey.
Yep. And you have them: Bridge of the Paper Tiger, Forbidden Chronicles of a Roman Centurion, Parchments of Fire, A Light Too Far Away, and The Rivergrass Legacy.
What theme are these? What's the genre?
They're all either, well, one of them is a pure romance, aimed specifically at a female audience. The others are mystery adventure novels.
All right, let's talk about the elephant in the room. You wrote a romance novel for a female audience and you won an award.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
How did you embody that voice?
Well, I decided I'd do something very, very different. So I went down in South Florida, visited a tropical fish farm where they breed those things to sell to the readers and fish hobbyist market. And I wrote it in terms of a mystery. I wrote it including some characters that were friends of mine, not mentioned by name, but I modeled after them. And lo and behold, the book won an award.
All right. So that's an amazing little feat that you were able to pull off. Did you have any women that caused any backlash?
No, the heroine was a woman.
Well, that's what I mean, though, is like, so this is more of aimed for a female audience, written by a man.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Congratulations. That's not an easy thing to do.
No, it was fun.
It was fun. Well, how'd you get started writing mysteries?
Well, I had done some writing as a CPA, but they were industrial, professional writings. Nothing at all like fiction. So I started and joined some writing groups and met some interesting people. And I had a meeting one day with a person who published books and wanted to see my manuscript. So we met at a restaurant, and we knew right away we didn't like each other. Her first comment was, "John, tell me what kind of things you read aside from the Internal Revenue Code." So I said, "Well, I often read my wife's hand-me-downs." He says, "Well, what does your wife let you read?" So I said, "Well, I read Danielle Steele and Ora Roberts." She put up her hand right away in my face, and she said, "Put them down. Don't pick them up again. I'll tell you what to write." And she said, "Tell me about your characters. What are their arcs?" Thought about it a minute, and I said, "Not sure I know what you mean." She kind of scowled at me, and she said, "Look, the protagonist starts out at the bottom of a slope, climbs the arc to the top, descends as a different person. So what are your characters' arcs?" I had to admit my characters had no arcs. I just kind of threw them into the plot. Because I was a new writer, I didn't know what to say. She blew up, walked out of there screaming, saying, "My God, do you think Hemingway threw his characters in? Do you think Shakespeare threw his characters in?" She threw her napkin down and stalked out. I kind of had to pay the bill. At that point, I realized I had a lot to learn.
So what was the first thing you embarked on as you went learning about how to write about characters?
I joined a writing group. It was a very interesting writing group, but they were very critical. A writing group where you turned in about 20 pages each week when you met. And one week I remember I met with him, and I had turned in my 20, 30 pages, and the reviewer was ready to read them at the meeting. And in walks this guy from Scotland. Not sure what his name was, I can't remember. But he sat down, and the meeting host said, "Would you like to join our group?" And he said, "Well, I want to test it out and see what you're like first." So the guy read my manuscript and all the critiques, and the thing ran red with critiques. And this poor Scottish guy was turning it to the moderator and then back at me, and I wasn't showing any signs of alarm because I'd been through this before. Finally, when the guy got through criticizing me, he turned to the Scottish guy and said, "Well, that's about it. Would you like to join our group?" There was a long silence, and the guy finally said, in a deep Scottish accent, "No, I don't think so. After seeing what you had done to this lad, I don't think I could take it." And he walked away. We never saw him again. So that was the first step in my journey.
And what was the next step?
The next step is I joined 2 more writing groups. They were not so critical, but I had become more professional by then. I learned how to write better, and I started submitting books, and the one I just told you about was the first one I submitted, The Rivergrass Legacy, and it won an award. And I've been improving ever since.
So what is your recommendation to new writers?
My recommendation to new writers is never give up. Be serious about it. Let yourself get bloodied by critiques. Try to get better and better all the time. And read, read, read.
Well, reading is definitely important. So do you still read your wife's hand-me-downs?
Not only that, I find my own hand-me-downs.
Very good. What's on your bookshelf right now?
Well, right now I just turned all my stuff into my wife. But let's see, the thing I was just finished reading, let's see if I can find it. Atonement by Ian McEwan.
Atonement. I read that quite a while ago. It is a very riveting story. Definitely worth the read of it. It does take you on a journey, though. So tell me about the journeys that your characters take. Do they climb to the top of the hill and back down?
Well, what I do is I confront them with a problem, and I make sure that my characters are not perfect. They always have a flaw or two, and the flaw gets in the way as they climb their arc and try to overcome the antagonist and solve the problem. And then at the end, I like to have a little bit of a twist. I think my readers like that.
I'm taking notes. I like this idea. The flaws get in the way, and then you give a twist.
Mm-hmm.
I recently heard a story about something called the skip step, which in old houses, there was often stairs that were not quite even. And inevitably, someone would trip on one of the steps. And that was a little alarm system. So you had to learn how to overcome the step if you were going to live there permanently.
Or you'd be setting off the alarm all the time.
Right. Well, the alarm was the thumping and the falling down the stairs of the old houses, back in the day.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of the skip step, but it's the same thing with the flaw gets in the way. And that's really what I'm referring to is we all have, as real humans, we have problems that hinder us. And it's a matter of figuring out the system to circumvent that problem so that we can achieve our next goal. So tell me about the other books you have.
Well, an interesting one is called A Light Too Far Away. It's based on the life of a former client of mine. She was a very courageous woman. She and her husband ran a business, and one day I was a consultant to the business helping them. One day she called me up and said, "My husband just died. Could you please come over?" So I did. And she said, "I don't know what to do with the business. I now own 100% of the stock. What'll I do?" I said, "Well, don't you stay and run the business?" She just glared at me. She said, "John, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard." She says, "I've never run a business. I work in the production end, but I know nothing about accounting." What I meant was, how can I get rid of the business? I said, well, you can always sell it, but if you sell it now, it's embryonic. You get 30 cents on the dollar. Why don't you think about it? Call me back. If you still want to sell it, we'll do it. A week later, she called me back. She said, okay, I'm going to keep it. Where do I start? So I walked her through the financial statements for 5 years. We spent all day, all night, the next day doing it. I turned her loose. 2 days later, I got a call from the shop foreman. He said, John, you got to get this woman out of my hair. She's driving me nuts. I said, well, you better be nice to her because this woman, quote unquote, owns the business. Well, long story short, she worked hard. She grew the business to a multi-million-dollar business, sold it, and moved to California.
That's a great story. So your novel's loosely based on her experience?
Nope. The novel is based on that woman as a client. It's a story about a woman who's a neurosurgeon who abandons her career to save the life of a 12-year-old kid who was stricken with an inoperable glioblastoma, a brain tumor. So the story is fiction, but that woman is real, and she's in my book all the way.
So you used her character, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Do you do a lot of research for your novels?
Oh, research is 2 inches thick. The book is only half an inch thick.
Where do you start?
Well, I start with an idea, but I don't write at all about it unless the idea is good enough, strong enough, universal enough to take up maybe 300 pages. One of my early books was called Bridge of the Paper Tiger, and in it is the story of the MS-13 Salvatorian street gang, Mara Salvatrucha. I wrote about that 5 years ago, and it wasn't until last year that hit the news. And if anyone had bought my book, they'd know what that street gang was like 5 or 6 years ago.
Wow. So you go through the process of researching and developing your characters,
yes.
Or do you use it for the scenarios?
No, I have to develop each character in order to begin the book. So I have an outline as to the plot, and I put down the characters, develop them, and then I start writing the book. It takes about 2,000 hours to finish one book.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Do you like to use the character profiles?
Yeah, you kind of have to profile your characters. Otherwise, if you don't, you can't keep them consistent throughout the book.
Have you written any series?
No, I've been asked to do that. I just have trouble with series because every time I look at a series, the next book just doesn't match up to the quality of the first one. I'm afraid my books will become diluted if I did a serial.
So, John, tell me, if you were to look at your desk right now, what does it look like?
You've seen the word mess, haven't you?
Yes.
That's what it looks like.
All right. Well, John, how could people get in touch with you?
They can get in touch with me through my website, engagingbooksonline.com. You can see all my books.
John, Are you ready to switch to our rapid fire questions?
Sure, fire away.
What is your favorite dessert?
My favorite dessert, believe it or not, is apple pie a la mode.
Nice all-American tradition, apple pie a la mode. Sounds delicious. I could use a bite right now. All right. Would you prefer a cabin in the woods, on the lake, or at the beach?
At the beach.
And finally, do you have a favorite emoji?
I used to have one because I drew, but I'm not an artist, but I sketch and draw, but I don't anymore.
Well, I like the smiley face with the sunglasses because everything is cool. That's right. I also like the one where the guy looks like his eyeballs popping out of his head. You know that.
Yeah.
Well, John, thank you so much for stopping by.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Good luck on your show. And if anyone wants to buy any of the books, have them contact me by the same phone number here I'm on with you, or they can get through that website of mine. And if they want to buy them and can't get them through the website, they can always go to Amazon.com under my name.
Perfect.
Or I'll tell you what, send me a letter or an email, and I'll mail them a book autographed.
Even better. Life just keeps getting better.
Amen. Thank you, Alice.
Well, thank you, John. You all have been listening to another episode of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. Alison out. Boo! We're all done.
Okay, thanks. I'll hang up.
All right. Bye, John. John P. Chaplick is an instructor in the field of forensic investigative accounting, fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. A current member of the Florida Writers Association, he is a former business owner, auditor, and partner in a national CPA firm. John's novels are based on the lives of his clients. For more information about John, visit him at his website at engagingbooksonline.com. For more information about the Florida Writers Association, visit us at floridawriters.org.